Hello, everyone. So this is Meet the Maintainer session. If you are a maintainer in Zephyr, please join us here at the front so you can speak up and answer questions, if need be. This is something that we started doing just last year, and it was really good, really successful. Yeah, and yeah, but Kate is not here. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. So, so we have people here, and non-maintainers, please come closer so you can actually participate in the conversation and ask questions without us like being spread around. Yeah. So does anybody know if Kate is coming? She is, okay. So again, as I said earlier, we did it for the first time last year, and it was really interactive and very successful. And a few actually of the points that were raised by the community and the various maintainers were taken into consideration. We had like a lot of actions and a lot of things that we did to improve our overall, processes, guidelines, and moving things forward. So basically, I would start like with the major problems that we as a community had, and we started to address, and that's like really the interface that we all have, which is GitHub, yeah, where we all meet, we will all converse and push our code and try to get reviews and try to get our changes and features we are interested in into the project. And one of the major problems that we had is like, one thing is the review time, not getting reviews, or getting the wrong reviews, and things sometimes not being merged in time, although there are reviews, or things that are merged very fast, and so on and so on. There's also a few issues that we talked about also in the TSC meeting that we had this week, about how do we actually go from somebody having an idea all the way to introducing this, into introducing something like that into the Zephyr tree. The RFC process, how do I propose something? How do I get feedback on an idea or a feature? And how do I drive something like that through the project? And it seems like, based on the conversation that we had and based on a lot of the experience and a lot of the interactions with developers and the community, it seems like this is not really understood and not perfect, and something that we definitely want to improve, so nobody's time is wasted, and that things actually take the right path very early on, instead of creating conflict sometimes, and as I said, wasting people time in terms of introducing new features. So this is like one of the things that we definitely need to talk about and get your feedback to be able to address. One thing that we addressed based on the feedback from last year was what we call right now the 4I principle, which is basically making sure that code changes get proper reviews from different stakeholders in the project, and that features don't get pushed, reviewed, merged, submitted, everything you want by one single organization. Yeah. That's something that we established based on the feedback that we got here. And I think it's working really well right now, yeah, in terms of like making sure that people are reviewing the changes and the right way, and that things don't get rushed into the tree based on one organization preferences or schedules and stuff like that. So there is always another set of eyes that looks at the changes and at least make sure that they are neutral and they are, sane, from a project perspective. And that actually is now documented. We need to find a way how to track it, but it's actually going really well. So these are like the two things that decision making, that we definitely something that we want to improve. And I just talked about the review process, the 4I principle which we introduced, and it has been working really well. I wonder if others have any other items they want to put forward, things that need to be discussed, that can be positive, can be negative as well. Yeah, don't hesitate to put also tough questions to the maintainers. We don't want to get into a review process here in this meeting in terms of like specific PRs and stuff like that. Usually this will not be productive, yeah, but try to help us as a community and try to get things moving forward for everyone, yeah, and not individual requests related to individual areas. So with that, I would pass the microphone to some of the maintainers here, just to give like, their thoughts about how things have been going, and then give the floor also to the community here to raise their concerns or their feedback in general. Yeah, Brix, anything you wanted to add? No.
Sure. Yeah, so I think overall, I mean, Zephyr seems to be a growing, flourishing community. The thing I would say that's, from as maybe a maintainer is I do think, Zephyr has a lot of users and a relatively small group of contributors in most areas, right? Like a lot of the chip vendors, or in this case, Brix, right, for CAN, for all chips. But, I would say just don't be afraid to contribute back. Even small things are very welcome. I think we try to be very welcome as a community. And really, that help is greatly appreciated. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just, adding on to what Anas is saying, we're trying to be transparent with everything that we do. Even from, the governing board perspective, we've got certain objectives that we want to improve on the project and to push down to the TSC and then push down into our community. And we look for the feedback from the community. The honest, there was a focus for since the surveys came back, multiple meetings looking at it. Benjamin processed the data through ChatGPT, I think, to try to figure out what the trends were that were coming back. Because as individuals, we all have, most of us all have day jobs and stuff, and we're trying to either, push along our own company's interests as far as enablement and stuff, but we're pretty much all of us are very cognizant to the fact that in order for the Zephyr project to continue to grow and to be successful, it has to be open, and it has to be, we as maintainers and stuff have to be aware of where the pain points are and then try to figure out ways to address them. And so we do, actively look for that feedback from you guys.
Anyone else before we pass?
So since we're talking about maintainership and maintainers, in general, aside from the eternal not enough maintainers problem that I don't think we need to go over, because we know there's not that much we can do other than attracting talent. I think one of the things I'd like to discuss that we have a problem with in this project is big changes. So it's really hard, and I understand that might be the case in other projects, I don't know, but there are proposals of changes that are bigger in size, in context, that are really hard to push through. And I think maybe we can do something about that, in the sense establishing timelines. There is something, already some precedents in our documentation, but perhaps if something is presented, it's well described, it's justified, and there is no reason for it not to progress, even if those that have objected to it disappear, there has to be a way to move it forward. And I think that's one of the things that I've been seeing as part of the architecture working group, where many maintainers attend, is this difficulty on pushing bigger changes because of concerns and backwards compatibility. And I think there is something we can do there, not, something in terms of agreeing together how best to do this without, obviously, without putting at risk the integrity of the project. But there's been too much frustration in the past with this kind of, from many people, not only, obviously, particular maintainers, in general, about the inability to do this. So that's one topic that I think is worth discussing.
Anybody else before we pass to?
Okay, there's another one.
Yeah, I'm probably the worst person to make points about process, but since it is a sort of a maintainer-focused issue, and we seem to be on the opposite side of it here, has anybody given any thought to the XZ debacle and the fallout thereof? I mean, there have been, so the circumstance there obviously was that you have a project with not enough maintainers. In that case, the number was 1, and someone shows up and is helpful and great and achieves commit rights and proceeds to then backdoor the project. Zephyr isn't susceptible. Like I say, I'm not really the right person to talk about this, but I do think it needs to be mentioned. Maybe this is more of a TSC question. But we're not as susceptible simply because we're not a single project. A backdoor in Zephyr is kind of a nebulous idea. But there have been, I'm not going to point any fingers. There have been sort of two moments in the last couple of months where I kind of thought maybe there was something in progress, kind of like that. Like there was a commit that showed up from a, otherwise minor contributor, and they had a bunch of warning fix-ups, and I kind of pointed out that like one of them involved a whole class of casts where you were taking what had been a arbitrarily typed thing, and you're casting it down to a 16-bit value, and I forget all the details, but like that can have security impact if you're actually truncating the top half of the word. And the other one was a request to add someone as a collaborator, and a collaborator's not like a big deal, right? But it was I think it was Chris that mentioned that it was a person with only 5 commits, and like I don't want to, like, there is zero real suspicion here in any way, and I don't actually think anyone's trying to backdoor Zephyr. But is this something we need to talk about as a process kind of thing, or at least to give some? Yeah. View?
Yeah, I've been given this actually particular thought mainly because of part of my background from a previous life. That particular instance, you have to look at it as a long con, right? So the person coming in with just a couple of commits, you can look at it, and you see the changes, but these entities that are going to do those kind of things, this last one was found because they had a bug, right? And every software has bugs, and those entities that are doing those kind of things are usually going to be focusing on that really hard. And also, you're particularly exposed because they were binaries, right? You're not going to see that. But I do think it is something, the project, and I was planning on bringing it up internally with either the security, probably in the security one, just to start it there. Let's think about this. What is it that we would do potentially to be aware or to look out for something like that? I think in this particular case, you've got a contributor that nobody really knows, right? It's just a name, right? Does anyone even have a face for this person?
Which person?
To be clear, there's zero suspicion here.
No, I know that, but I think it's something that you, as a large project that is being used and growing, you do want to be. I think you do want to have some sort of a, not necessarily a position, but to start, building into your processes things that would
Right, like name brand employer, years long history, that sort of thing. But again, I have no suspicion of this individual at all, and the request was just for collaborator status, which is literally just so you can @ them in a GitHub issue, so that to ask for a review. I don't think that's a problem. It tickled my brain enough to think that I think we might want to give this some thought.
Go ahead, Kumar.
Just as you're thinking about it, David, I think looking at, and I forget the history here with what the Linux kernel did with regards to like key signing and so forth, so that way commits, and not to say that we need to go to that degree, but something like around maintainers, or like some of that model where you had to have somebody else sign your key and so forth, so that at least there was someone was real, right, to some degree at some point in, again, not to say that's at a contributor level, but maybe as you get to a maintainer level or something, to that long con potential concern. So,
yeah, I think I know what Andy is referring to exactly. Yeah, and by the way, that's really funny, because when I went through the history of the exploit in XZ. And looked at the names of these guys, somehow that correlated. Probably Andy knows what I'm talking about. And I thought about it multiple times. Yeah, the social pressure and the social engineering, and how do you get commit rights, and so on and so on. But I mean, obviously, we the way we are running our project, it's different from how these projects are run. But I think the problem, and that's something that needs to be discussed, is that we have, and Carlos pointed that out, we have a problem of, maintainers, yeah? But more than that, we have problem of, to get to a maintainer, at least per our process, you have to be a collaborator, right? So, and people who actually review stuff, yeah? And the way we are doing things right now is that we used to have the code owners file, where would people actually get notified when something has changed. Right now we have the maintainer file, which does that exactly. And certain people want to get notified when something changes, maybe because they care about this, and that's really great, yeah. And there is the other side of things from people, from vendors in this instance, who are very active in the project, but they are hesitating to actually go and add themselves into the maintainer file, maybe because of how we are documenting things and how we are like. It seems like it's almost, we are telling people, okay, we have this concept of maintainer, collaborator, contributor, etc. But hey, you have, there are these checks or whatever that you have to go through, and maybe nobody actually reads the documentation and don't understand, because I don't think it's that bad, yeah? But there seems to be a major disconnect.
It's a mental block.
Yeah, it's a mental block. Yeah,
multiple times I've had to tell people, don't worry, it's not that bad. It's
exactly,
not,
exactly.
Some people tend to think that maybe that's going to eat up half of my free time. No, that's not the case.
Exactly, and probably in this particular instance, and actually I was even commenting, like, this guy is contributing to this area, and yeah, where did he come from? And we have actually a lot of instances like that people come in, and you show a lot of interest, start submitting stuff and changing and etc. And out of and you don't even know who they are, right? And I get contacted a lot. Can I add myself, etc. And I will not get to a point where I say, no, you can't add yourself because whatever. Sure, welcome, add yourself, yeah, and I'll monitor that, yeah. So we need to be careful in terms of like, what does it mean actually? Does it just because somebody is in the maintainer file as a contributor, does not pose a risk from a project perspective? I don't think so, yeah, because we still have whatever is being submitted, whether you are in the maintainer file or not, needs to be reviewed by other people, needs to be reviewed by the maintainer themselves. And you will not get far if you try to do something,
even if you have merge rights, because it will be
exactly.
detected.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
the way we run, like you were saying, the way we run Zephyr is completely different to that one-man project where this guy probably didn't have time to get. I think we have enough safeguards. Honestly, I think we're quite safe in that regard. We have safeguards in terms of the way we review, the way we merge, and the way we go and incorporate code that we hopefully are not susceptible, not to this point at least.
Okay, at this point, I want actually to pass to the other side, the contributors, the suspicious contributors, collaborators. So anybody has any questions, any feedback, any comments on how things are being running? If that's, again, it can be positive as well. You can say, hey guys, this is great. Yeah, and maybe we can close early, yeah?
Yeah, I have a question for the maintainers. With 3.7, which is LTS, just coming up, what things do you think you would do differently compared to the last LTS? What are the points of improvement, and what needs to be wrapped up? What do you think is, hey, this is overarching, maybe hardware model B2 needs some changes and whatnot? It's an open question.
I think we talked a little bit about it in the TSC, didn't we? Aligning or being careful with aligning with external modules that we are taking into account the versioning and the release process and the forecast or the release preparations that they have in planned of projects that are included with Zephyr is important for sure, because we had a bit of a snafu with TLS last time, right? TFM, sorry. TFM, yeah. So that's one problem. The other thing is, I remember Chris with the changes. Chris Fried, I'm not sure if he's here, but he had the proposal to add a lot of changes to RISC-V. But there was in the LTS, but there was a good reason behind that, in the sense that SMP was completely broken. I mean, that was a mistake, shipping an LTS with SMP support for RISC-V that was broken. I think that's something we should learn from, for sure.
It was not complete. No, I mean, I would say it was not complete. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but my point being that it was not, you had config SMP that would not fail you the RISC-V build, and at the same time, at least according to him, it was not usable. Arguably.
And let me add on that too, because from an LTS perspective, it would be useful to get the feedback from the community that's consuming that as to what expectations they would like to see on that. I mean, we clearly understand that bugs and security fixes need to be addressed. There is some disagreement about whether or not you should allow new SoCs or boards, but where does that line go, right? I don't really care personally. I mean, I put something up in the TSC about that, but it was more in alignment about how we do the timings of LTSs and how long we support them. But it would be useful from the community that may be doing products where they require an LTS because of the longer term commitments and what they would expect from the project, from us, because a lot of the members of the, like myself, I'm a semiconductor vendor. I don't do products. So, I mean, products in the sense of, I sell chips to bricks.
I want to say about a problem, is that sometimes some pull requests are taking too much time to be reviewed. So we have a minimum amount of time that needs to pass so the pull request gets merged, but we also need to have a maximum time that after that, if no one reviews, it gets merged automatically or something like that. Where,
No.
Or maybe we can have a staging area where that code is merged. Like for drivers that are not touching anything, we can relax the rules sometimes.
But the thing is, a pull request is a staging area. It's a branch, right?
Yeah.
What you mean is like a staging area where multiple pull requests get merged. But then you wouldn't be able to rely on that anyway, because because then, first of all, maintaining a Git head is always a costly thing. So that doesn't come for free. So because then you would have to cherry pick that under which criteria, then back to main. It would be yet another review, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you would basically have created a parallel Zephyr, right? I'm not sure that that adds value, honestly, from my perspective, because you can do that yourself. I mean, everybody, in the talk with Jordan earlier today, he mentioned I had the fork of Zephyr with all sorts of cherry-picked patches and fixes, and invariably, I guess, almost everybody ends up doing this when they're doing a product, especially a product that needs to live for a long time. And I don't think having that branch would save you from having to do this, honestly.
Yeah. But Carlos, I mean, the problem was raised is that there's a minimum time.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was replying to the second part.
Yeah, exactly. And there are a lot of pull requests. Actually, today I was looking over 800 open pull requests. And okay, I mean, I don't usually get scared because, there are lots of drafts, there's a lot of whatever, but there is a class of pull requests that go in. Either the maintainer is non-responsive, either they are not maintained, or not maintained, they don't get assigned to anybody, yeah? Or basically they just take forever because there is disputes or there's and by the way, some pull requests rightfully take time and need to take time, yeah?
Some are abandoned by the author as well, to be fair.
Sorry?
Some are abandoned by the author as well.
Or some get abandoned by the author as well, but I mean, there are different classes, but there is also this class of things that just die on their own.
Yeah.
And I was showing that in my presentation yesterday, is that the reason, I mean, we have probably 90% of our contributors over time who actually submit 1 commit or 10 commits, yeah? Or they show up just like for less than, then they disappear, yeah? And my question is why, yeah? I mean, that could be somebody just fixing a typo for fun, yeah? Or somebody who actually tried to submit something, maybe got something in first just to get familiar with the project, and then try to submit something more serious, was never, it was never reviewed, and we have many of those, and just gave up and moved. This thing is not working for you. And that's something we need to figure out, how to go back to this class of PRs that are not drafts and not DNMs and not failing CI or whatever. Even those but failing CI. Actually, we have so many pull requests that get stale, get abandoned, whatever, that we have in the queue right now. It's because the authors submitted something, they didn't get their emails right, and it's the compliance check is failing, and people are asking them to go fix them. Probably they have no idea how to fix their Git identity, and they get stuck and stay stuck for such a long time. And people ask them, can you rebase, or can you change your email, blah, blah, blah. And things never happen, and then they just move away. So there are like different classes. We need to have a way to keep track of those and ask ourselves why. Yeah, but having said that, and thanks to Keith.
I was going to call out.
Yeah, go ahead, Keith. You can talk about that. Yeah.
There is an escalation process for PRs if they get stalled. So we do have that written down and documented. One part of that is the dev review meeting that happens on Thursdays. It's led by Marine. Does some triage and tries to look for things that have been neglected or got ignored. But there's a documented process, ping on the PR, ping on Discord, that sort of thing. So do check that out. It's not a perfect process. If you have suggestions for improvements, please reach out to us.
One more thing related to this, one thing that I do see as possible and that may be helpful is calling out, for example, every TSC, we could do something like gather statistics on reviews that have not been looked at by the maintainer, and basically going out, this maintainer has this many outstanding reviews, that may help, things like that. Or even taking it to the extreme, if you have more than 100 pending reviews, your maintainership suspend. I'm going too far probably there, but you see my point. I think that could work instead of auto-merging or merging to another branch, right? That's the direction I would go in.
So I think there's another class of PRs, at least that I personally struggle with as a maintainer, is that, you know, when you have somebody who's new to open source and contributes a very large driver, it's a large burden to review it, and it's kind of hard to give somebody feedback on that when there's 1,000 things that need to change. And like how do we get them to kind of scope things down to the point that it is not such a huge burden on maintainers to review and come back and review, because there's often multiple iterations, and the larger the pull request is, the more iterations it tends to take, especially with new contributors. And it's something that I see a lot with, and I struggle to keep up with them because there's just so many.
So I have a comment. I had a question. Maybe we can add to like the contribution guideline. What can be like the expectation? Like when you're doing a PR, I know there is what should be like the minimum amount of time, but what is expected amount of time that your PR can sit in a review? I'm just telling this because today I got like a message from my colleagues, and they were like asking, oh, can we do something to speed up the PR? And they were showing like several of their commits, and they were asking, oh, maybe if we join it as a contributor or something. But I look at the PRs, and they were like, it took only a week from the point when it was posted. There was like several discussion going on and forth, like with the comments, answering to the comments, like fixing the comments, and then only one day from after the last comment was fixed to the point where it was merged. So it was like everything took like a week, and they were asking like, oh, can we do faster? How can we speed it up? And I was like, I don't know how to respond. I think it's like perfectly fine with it. So maybe
I think because I know the conversation in this case, it would fall onto us to set the expectations correctly to our colleagues who are used to another pace of development because they develop, you know, private.
Zephyr is not a product. If you want to get things accelerated, create a fork and do everything you want.
We have it.
I know this. Yeah.
So I guess we kind of responded to that by and explained it. I was just wondering, maybe in a documentation like contribution guideline, give you like what is expected. Like if it takes a week, it's kind of normal that it can take
exactly.
a week.
I think that still makes sense to set timelines very approximate, but say okay, maybe after a week start complaining, but not after 20 minutes. That I think would make sense.
Well, and I'll say that, I mean, Daniel knows we're internal in our company. We've got a lot of new people coming on board, and they're used to a process internally where they post a PR, and I'm not even sure some of them get reviewed. They just get merged and they let testing test. And so, but I think externally, you also get folks coming in that may be coming from a same kind of environment, a corporate environment or something like that. And in an open source project, again, a lot of the maintainers, a lot of the collaborators, those people that are going to be reviewing it also have day jobs. And so you have to let that process work through.
Well, but you'd also push. I mean, I was going to...
No, there's nothing wrong with pushing.
Right.
Nudging, as I would call it, nudge.
Exactly.
But you still have to, as long as there's conversation going on, unless the conversation's just going nowhere, and if you can figure that out, then address it, but, yeah.
Yeah, and just to sort of interject, because this is not a process thing, so I'm totally expert to talk about it. You know, those of us who have been around here a long time just get a ton of review requests. I mean, it's a non-ending flood, and most of them, I mean, the bulk of them are like in drivers and our subsystems I don't care about, and I know there are other experts, I can ignore them. But the problem is if I get busy and I ignore my, you know, it's all filtered into a separate folder, right? But if I ignore my GitHub email for 3 or 4 days, there's now, you know, 1,000 or 2,000 messages in there. I'm never going to get to whatever was missed. It's just not going to happen. So scream, yell on Discord, if you at me on GitHub, again, it's going to go into the giant queue. It might get lost. Yeah. But it just makes sure that I see it, and I'll come and review it, right? I mean, but and I think that's true for everybody. I mean, you can do this
that's actually
key. I think Discord versus GitHub notification.
Discord, GitHub. I think that goes back like somebody like Andy, somebody like me, Kumar probably, and a few others. You getting a lot of notifications. You are probably assigned to many areas and so on. Yeah, that's where actually the one problem that we have is the granularity of the areas. I mean, that's what, for example, something that we discussed for things like like the device tree or device model or like key areas. We need to have multiple maintainers and have a round robin type of thing. We did that for the kernel, so it's now Andy and Peter, right? And we did that for other areas as well, yeah. So and probably we need to do that more. So there is some load balancing somehow. So it's not, and also keeping people honest, yeah, in terms of like, you know, me as a maintainer submitting something, probably somebody else needs to, you know, be assigned to it and approve it. Just going back to what was said earlier by Machi and the whole Zephyr is not a product, that's exactly why we introduced the 4I principle, because this actually avoids that, yeah? I know exactly how it feels, yeah, and probably everybody here getting like the nudge, can you merge it? Yeah, can you merge it? No, I can't merge it. It has to be approved by somebody else. And I tell that people straight away, yeah. If you want it now, if you want it today, just, you know, cherry pick the change and put it in your tree, yeah. It doesn't work otherwise. And that actually works really great, yeah, because this keeps everyone honest in terms of like, the personal preferences and collegial, you know, you're sitting in a room, somebody submits, 2 minutes later you have 2 approvals, and 3 minutes later it's merged. That's gone. That's not going to happen anymore. Hopefully, yeah. There are always exceptions, and we can deal with that. That's why David, when he has something and so on, it's already reviewed, etc. He asks me, and I ask him exactly the same way. Go take a look at that and merge it if you see it's correct. I don't merge it myself. Yeah? And that's, in my opinion, that is working really great. And I see that from, actually, very interesting, because I saw a PR by Nordic. No, wait a second. Yeah, wait a second. Which was, it was reviewed only by Nordic, and it was merged by Carlos. And I know Carlos sometimes, you know, over coffee, I don't know what he's doing. So, things get missed. I miss things as well. But the nice thing that I saw is the submitter or somebody, what's his name, Tali, yeah? He actually commented, said, Carlos, you were too fast. This was approved only by.
I know which one you mean.
I appreciate that, yeah. And this is really great because we understand. You know, it's a process. I understood immediately that was not like intentional or anything. Things happen, right? So that's really how it's working really well. Sorry, that was a long monologue. Yeah. Go ahead.
One thought in this space is you know, and we're doing it now, but I think it's also some, you know, maybe a tech talk or something about what it's like to be a maintainer, right? In the sense of the burden that is there, my queue backs up if I don't look at stuff for 4 days, right? Or whatever, and just that sense of like, hey, you know, there were, like early on when I started contributing to open source, I remember we were working on U-Boot and at the company I was at, and we had a really hard time getting code accepted, and we didn't understand why or what was going on. And after a while, we realized that, you know, and this goes to kind of Anas's, you know, what he had in his presentation about where we have, you know, a significant number of contributions that are by people who are only contributing, you know, 5 or 10 PRs or something or lower. And the thing in that project became clear was the maintainer's like, look, I've got to maintain this code well after you go away, right? The reason that his bar was so high for those small cases was, look, you're going to go back to your day job, you go back to building your product, whatever. I've got to still keep this code going and living and maintaining and dealing with it. And so, and the bar dropped as well, because once he realized, hey, you're actually going to be here as part of this community of, you're not just that person that's going to get, you know, and I've been, you know, I have projects where I've contributed 1 or 2 patches to something to fix something and go back to whatever I was doing. So there's cases on being on both sides of that. But that kind of sense of saying, hey, you know, if I know Carlos submits something and I look at it and it's like, it's not perfect, I know if I go back to him in a week or something, you know, he's there because he's engaged, he's there, he's part of the community, you know that, right? Versus somebody that you kind of just don't know who they are, and maybe it's 1 or 2, and it's like, so I think there's some things there on just kind of being able to express for people to understand why these why is it that we're not merging things and you're used to your company environment where things go in and so forth, right? Why we're able to say the quality of this open source project is what it is because we do these things, right? So.
One of the talks that Greg Crow-Hartman gave a while back at, I think it was at Lenaro, was, help me not to reject your patch. And I think maybe us doing a variant of that for Zephyr and helping educate everyone as to, okay.
Yeah, again, like I'm going to repeat that internally we have a lot of new developers. I mean, they're not new to developing. They're obviously very experienced, but they're new to Zephyr. And I'll tell you, I'm like a repeating broken record when I talk about, they'll say, hey, help me with my PR. This is not, and I go and look, CI's failing. I said, guys, you're not going to get anyone's paying attention to it because they're busy. Make sure it's clean first. So, yeah, it's a constant educational thing. We have it internally, obviously, and we have a number of developers. I'm sure when Nordic brings on new folks or new teams, you've had the same kind of challenges. So, and it's true from the community perspective too.
Perhaps an idea could be to start with a tips and tricks page and a documentation for how do I get my PR merged. So we have all these escalation paths documented as it is today, and they could develop committer expectations and whatnot. But some of these stuff, as you say, it's when we're pinged on Discord, it's literally many of the but CI is failing, or this one wasn't approved by the ISNE or whatever.
Looking at Benjamin right now.
Yeah, I am too.
Instead of tips and
this
tricks,
could be
how
like a
about
TikTok talk, yeah.
But how about, how
I'll
about
be
the
happy to
internal,
host, and tell people how, to get their BR moving.
Yeah, I did. But instead of tips and tricks, we've been talking about an FAQ forever, and that FAQ could be technical and also regarding contribution. So FAQ, page FAQ, and you redirect them with FAQ, and you can link this section links, right? And that would work, in my opinion, very well. So I'm gonna end up.
And by the way, yeah, when it comes to CI, it's going to be even more difficult as we move forward. I mean, there are so many ideas to do things, Some people are actually even considering involving AI. Yeah, I mean, you yeah. No, so it's but on a serious note, CI is our best friend. Yeah, because without CI, at least when it's working correctly, you have to go through every single line of code, etc. And first, I have to verify, obviously, that it builds, right? That it follows like a certain style. In the future, we will have, coding guidelines enabled. Yeah, so we are consistent in how we write code and documentation has to build, etc., etc. So if I have to do it manually as a maintainer, that's like another hour per PR that I have to, depending on the PR side, right? So CI is our best friend. And however, as I was saying earlier, a lot of the PRs that we have are stuck on the Git identity and not using the same Git or whatever, or using GitHub to submit a PR, which has like just stupid GitHub no reply, stuff. And we need, I don't know how to fix this, but and I mentioned that on some other forum, maybe our documentation is probably not addressing that. Yeah, maybe we should, when something like this happens, post like a comment in the PR. That's how you fix it. Right now, it's like so hidden that people just ignore it.
I have to say, this with Benjamin's changes, where you have this comment for the first PR, that mentions specifically, that links specifically the commit format.
Yeah.
I think those that are too lazy, well, let's not say lazy, but that they don't persevere.
Yeah.
Those that don't persevere across beyond the first error message, I think they have not looked at what the GitHub page shows them, because it's not buried. It's right there. That's if it's their first PR. But I assume in the second one they've gotten the commit format right. So I think another or the bot. I think yet another message. Hey, this is a common occurrence. Blah blah blah. This is how you do Git author. Git commit amend author and so on. Sure, but I have to say that this works wonders already.
Yeah, I completely agree. But there are like some Git hackery or some Git like details that not everybody is able to do that if they are using Git for the first time, like changing your author or whatever. You really have to, anyways. But
although it is explained in the
yeah, but just frankly, given the size of the community and the number of new potential contributors, those folks who don't follow up when we ask them to change their email, there's maybe nothing to do about it. Like they moved on. They're not interested, and the PR we just let it be closed by the bot.
We just close the BR in this case.
Yeah, and that's what we do.
Because
like the bot eventually closes it.
Because the problem is, and that's really what drives some people crazy, is that some of these PR, somebody submits an issue. Sometimes it's a typo, you know. There's an issue about that. They open a PR, so we have to triage it and spend time on it in our meetings. Then there's a PR about that. Yeah, that is somebody has to go and look through it, and it's stuck. The issue is stuck. We can't fix it because the PR is stuck, because we are expecting this person to do it, but this person has moved on. So we need to figure out how, I mean, if somebody doesn't respond, just override the PR or submit another PR, close it.
You know, time bound it in.
Yeah,
there's a limit in time, and then after that, that's it.
And we are timing out here, yeah, so as well, because we are over time, actually, yeah. And but if there are a few last questions, let's close on that. And
yeah, you said something about contributors you can add yourself. So, for example, if I'm interested in reviewing and, I don't know, maybe fixing some of the drivers from another company, like Intel, we are working together at Sound Open Firmware, and I'm interested in their PRs regarding DMA, for example, or DI interface. I'm not notified by those PRs. How can I be notified? Because, okay, I receive a lot of emails, I cannot follow them. But some of them, I'm interested in them, so I can add myself as a contributor for that? Or
yes, of course. I mean, that's exactly the scare factor.
Yeah, exactly.
One second. Yeah, the scare factor that we have is that, oh, this is Intel. I have to be Intel to be contributor. That's not true. Yeah, if you go in and add yourself there, I will be happy to approve that. Probably I will not do something like that for myself by adding myself to the NXP stuff, because that's like a whole thing of, I mean, so many things are happening, which is good, yeah.
As I said, for some of these, we're working together on Sound Open Firmware.
I know, yeah. And there's another thing which we are not using. There's actually, in the maintainer file, there's a way to get notified, and you are not a contributor, you are a watcher, basically, yeah? That's something probably we need to start doing more often, yeah?
Yeah, I think in this case, because I mean, you are a collaborator, right? There's a collaborator section in the maintainer file for those, the DMA and DI sections. If you send a pull request, for either of those, I would +1 it. So
do you think that the community grows so much so it would make sense to follow the Linux kernel process where we split on multiple repos? Like for a Linux kernel, each maintainer has its own repo, and the community is smaller, so you can follow it better.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're there yet to be doing that, but yeah.
I mean, the first problem with that is non-linear Git history anymore. So
yeah,
I know that many people will not like that, because then you have to use Git merge for the model that Linux uses. So no more Git rebase on top, everything. So that's something that we'd lose, because the simplicity of a linear Git history is definitely a plus. I mean, obviously it's not always possible, but when it is, it's a definite plus.
But the current growth rate, I think.
I agree. No, I'm not saying you. I'm not saying
what
it's not a good
problem
idea.
are you trying to solve? I'm not sure exactly what is the problem.
There are too much notifications, and there are too much notification, and we cannot follow exactly what we want. So, like, we want to follow only the, I don't know, DMA community or audio community. And when you look at the GitHub, there are.
But I mean, then figure out. I mean, the notification. If this is a global GitHub problem. I mean, if you are using notification to follow what's going on, I agree with you, right?
Yeah.
I would say we need to figure out how to improve this without splitting the tree. I'm not sure exactly how you are going to solve this by splitting the tree and having multiple branches and multiple repos. Yeah.
But don't start with how to solve it.
Yeah, yeah.
Find the problem and then let's have a discussion outside of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I do think there's different workflows you can engage into to be able to follow things. And I'm exploring those myself.
You could use labels, for example. I'm sure the pull requests and issues you're interested in share a label. So, I'm not sure whether GitHub allows you to filter by label, but otherwise, you could write your own script. I'm not saying it's ideal, but
so I'm kind of I'm one of these unknowns that none of you have ever heard from or heard of before. But I've been working with Zephyr for like 5 years now. I was at Meta working on their undercover projects on custom silicon. So I've been doing SoC level, board level, even some Arch level work in the tree, but you would never see any of the work that we're doing. And now I've left and gone to another 30-person company, and I'm working with a silicon vendor who's had a third party trying to do their Zephyr integration. They're doing it all closed, and they're doing it all wrong, and they will not listen to me. And so now I basically, for our company, I'm doing our own port of this new SoC from this other silicon vendor that's not represented here. And I've been thinking this week that I need to contribute this, in small stages, right? Here's a basic SoC with a serial port. Here's adding things on because of all the things I've heard in these conversations. But, I'm that dark horse who's going to come in and say, hey, I've got all kinds of great stuff to commit. But how do you recommend people like me come in? Because I'm sure there are a lot of people like me who are working in very closed systems who at some point will be in a position where, hey, now I can contribute and want to contribute. So
I can answer that. The answer is consistency. I mean, you send a pull request there, you wait, you ping people, but the thing is that you need to help the maintainer. You need to create a pull request very easy to be reviewed, and you get some of them going, and once people start to know you, you build trust, and at that point it would get easier.
Contributing something.
Yeah, I'd say start small with something that's missing.
Right.
And start small with something that's missing, and then keep building on it. Don't go thump everything at once.
Oh, no. Yeah,
and
that's why I say
just
I would
start small and incremental, and I think build trust over time.
But you already said your answer yourself. I mean, SoC with a UART, that's exactly how you do it. I mean, one SoC with one driver, a board, obviously, that you can compile that. You're on the right track. Just send a pull request. Documentation, yeah, sure.
Documentation. Okay, guys, this is like really. Erwan, you wanted to say something, or? Yeah.
Yes, just one point we were mentioning about notification, how to be notified and so on. There is a feature in GitHub where you can disable mails, and you have a kind of use a kind of dashboard that is available, and you can configure and filter on whatever on labels that you're interested in. And this is what I'm using on the day-to-day basis, and it's quite helpful actually. So it avoids to get a ton of mails that you won't read anyway. So this is an interesting feature in GitHub that can be useful.
There's actually also a lot of extra headers in the mails from GitHub. So if you can do custom filtering on your mail client or mail server, you can filter it into categories and monitor it much better that way.
I think we definitely, I mean, probably not the FAQ, but we need like best known methods, like tips and tricks type of section, yeah, where all of this input, everybody has their dot files that do something with, or tools or whatever. That's something we definitely need. Like this is like, I think it's becoming essential, yeah.
We already have that in several places, like in Beyond the Getting Started guide, there's a couple of tricks. I know that in West, for example, we explain to people how to redirect the URL so they can use HTTPS, so that use HTTPS instead or SSH instead of HTTPS and so on. So we should put that all together, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. That's where we need to be careful. Probably it doesn't have to be in the documentation as we have it. Mm-hmm. We need to figure out probably a better way, like a wiki or something like that. I don't know, yeah. But something that is
Not sure. Why? I mean, why split it up?
because it's not documentation really.
Well.
Yeah. Anyways, we
I
can
give
figure
you-
it out. Yeah.
Okay.
I want like something to be like live. Like okay, you have an idea, you just put it. You don't have to go submit a pull request and then it gets stuck for 10 days just because you have a tip. Or I remember submitting a tip. And somebody, that works only for you. You have to set up this. You have to set up that. That's actually like West update when you do bisection, for example. I wanted to automate that. I don't want, because every time you do a bisection, the next commit doesn't work because of some stupid module that has changed, right? And this is like very useful. And I tried to get it in, but somebody said, didn't like it, and I had to abandon the whole idea, because I didn't have time for it. But anyways. Beside the point, we need probably to figure out how to put this information, make it available, and encourage that to push it in without having to go through the review process, right? Anyways, so we are out of time. You want to say something?
I just wanted to say thank you very much to all the maintainers who have actually managed to keep the velocity going over this last year. We've seen a tremendous amount of growth, and it's very much thank you to all of your hard work. Much appreciated.
And each maintainer who attended today will get another coin, from